All right. I think I got it all done there. All right. Let me make this bigger. Oh, wrong thing. Swap. There we go. That seem right to everyone now? Okay. All right. So yeah, thanks again for having me back, Peter, and everyone. I'm always excited to talk with you all. And today we're going to be discussing breathing for better brain health. This is simply something I've become really interested in the past, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 months or so. So I've been reading about it and have come across some cool things. So we're going to just talk about what we can do to protect our brains with our breath, and then we'll go through some practices and kind of at the beginning here, we'll relate it back to diabetes. So I want to start with a quote from Peter Attia, different Peter here, MD, from his book Outlive, because he had something really interesting that I'd never heard. This top thing: what's good for the heart is good for the brain. And then he goes on to, I guess, go on that and say, vascular health, meaning low ApoB, low inflammation, and low oxidative stress is crucial to brain health. And this, I think, sets the stage for understanding both the ties to diabetes and the ties to breathing, because we know not everyone, right, but that with diabetes, it can increase our chances of systemic inflammation, and it can increase oxidative stress, our baseline oxidative stress. So two of these things he directly mentioned here can be impacted negatively from diabetes. And then as I was looking around for the direct ties to diabetes, of course, it's always depressing seeing like all the different things they say about diabetes, like damaged blood vessels in the brain can contribute to cognitive decline. This one was interesting that, the brain depends on many different chemicals and can be unbalanced by insulin. And then that high blood sugar causing inflammation, which we just talked about. And of course, because of that, lots of studies have shown a link between diabetes and dementia, diabetes and Alzheimer's, diabetes and things like depression and anxiety, and just cognitive decline in general. In this one, in type 1, showing cognitive decline across broad categories, including visual, spatial ability, and memory. So I don't like to look at this stuff too much as a type 1 myself because it's depressing, but I also do understand the value of awareness, right? That's all of what meditation and mindfulness are about, is being aware of the present moment and being aware that these are true dangers of our disease. And so to take steps from there, you can actually, move forward with clarity, just like we do it with mindfulness, to take steps to improve our chances to mitigate some of these negative impacts of the disease. So what are some things we can do to protect our brain? Well, control our blood sugars. That's always number one, right? Exercise, that goes without saying. That's one of the best things we can do for all aspects of our health and wellness. Eat healthy foods, whatever that means to each of us, right? We're all a little different in what our bodies need, but eating better. But today, what I want to talk about is actually breathing. So how the way we breathe can actually help our brain health a little bit. And the things we're going to discuss in this short session are mindful breathing, which most of you will probably be pretty familiar with, alternate nostril breathing, which may or may not be new to some of you, and then slow breathing. And then at the end, we're going to combine these into a nice 12-minute practice we can all do together. And throughout the session, we'll go through each of these and we'll practice them for a minute or two by themselves, just so you can get comfortable with them. So let's start with mindful breathing, and we'll start by practicing it. Because most of you are probably familiar with it, you don't have to change your position or anything like that. Just wherever you're sitting now, or standing or lying down, just find a comfortable position and just close your eyes and begin to notice where you feel the sensations of breathing in your body. There's no right or wrong. It may be in your nostrils, maybe in your throat or your chest or your abdomen. Just bring awareness to where you feel the breath. And when your mind wanders away, just think, oh, well, right? That's what my mind is supposed to do, is think thoughts. And then bring it back to wherever you're feeling the breath most vividly right now. Now you can take your attention off of your breath and allow your mind to just wander again. You can open your eyes when you're ready and come back to the presentation. So that simple practice that most of you have probably done a time or two, probably in some of these sessions, is really the first breathing you can do to improve your brain. And a great analogy I've heard from it is from someone named Amishi Josh. She wrote an incredible book called Peak Mind, all about mindfulness. And she calls this exercise a mindful breathing push-up, or she calls them mindful breathing push-ups that we're doing. So essentially what we did, right, we take our attention, we put them somewhere on our breath, the breathing sensations, wherever you found them most vivid. Then your mind starts to wander, right? You start thinking thoughts and you notice it. And then the third component of this push-up is to redirect your mind back to the breath. So I really like this analogy because, like, sort of, if we think of we're training our brains, right? We're trying to make our brain stronger, similar to going to the gym, right? The more push-ups you do, the stronger you get. Well, the more times you sit with your breath, just observing it, you're actually training your brain. And it turns out that these push-ups, so to speak, actually physically change your brain. And one of the key ways it does that is through something called gray matter. And this is the easiest definition I could find of this, because I'm not a neuroscientist by any means, was that gray matter is where neurons in the brain communicate. So it's really important for healthy brain function. And so now decades and decades of research on mindfulness have shown us that mindfulness changes gray matter in the insula. So a place where we integrate senses, emotions, and thoughts, very critical to having a healthy brain. It can reduce gray matter in the amygdala, so where we have our fear and emotional responses in general. And then it can also affect gray matter in the hippocampus, which does a lot of things, but two notable ones are memory and learning, and then the prefrontal cortex. And in fact, for that last part, for the cortical area, Sarah Lazar has a great quote I found in, I believe this was in The Healing Power of Meditation. Interestingly, when we plotted each person's cortical thickness in the region against their age, the graph suggested that meditation may help to slow down or even prevent this normal age-related decline in thickness. And so that is really powerful to see that we can actually, reverse or even slow down or even prevent changes in the thickness of gray matter in the cortical areas. Again, just protecting our brain and helping us. Of course, there's no studies with people with diabetes that I know of, specifically with mindfulness, but I can't imagine that it hurts in any way to do these practices, and could potentially help us with some of the things we saw at the beginning with changes in our brains. And actually, I just saw there was a study in just published a couple of weeks ago on the brain health and diabetes. It was all type 2 from what I could find. So might not apply to many of us, but it was still interesting because they talked about gray matter reduction. So actually the gray matter thickness was reduced in people with type 2 diabetes, in specific areas that are counter to what they found with mindfulness. So again, it's all kind of speculative until you have these more controlled studies, but still interesting nonetheless to see that we could see potentially some really positive benefits from that. So with that, that is mindful breathing. We could do, of course, there's books written on that. So I'm just kind of scratching the surface to give us a taste. So now I want to move into actual breathing practices where we actually manipulate our breath. And I want to talk about alternate nostril breathing. So this is a really powerful technique we can do for our brain, for our cardiovascular systems, and it's just a fun one to do on top of that. So I want to let's see, it's moving around funny, but let's start with nasal breathing in general, which will then lead us into alternate nostril breathing. So lots of research now has told us that breathing through our nose helps with our brain much more than breathing through our mouth. So nasal inhales tend to synchronize electrical activity in our brain. So brain oscillations across various regions of the brain associated with emotion, memory, and behavior. So this is really well documented in some really cool studies showing that basically breathe through your nose, will synchronize brainwave oscillations. And then this leads to improved performance on cognitive tasks, and specifically on emotional recognition, and then visual and spatially oriented tasks. Getting back to what we said at the beginning with type 1 diabetes, these were some of the areas where cognitive decline was noted. So breathing through our nose, of course, we don't know if it'll fix it, but it can't hurt, and it may even help us along those lines. That's nasal breathing in general, but I want to talk now about the specific effects of alternate nostril breathing by talking about this one really neat study published in Nature Scientific Reports back in 2016. So they were looking at how alternate nostril breathing improves the learning and retention of motor skills. So they had a silly test that ends up to be pretty cool. They took 40 participants and they said, okay, I want you to draw a circle on this on an electronic tablet and try to get it between these two black lines. So basically their hand was hidden from them, and they had to look at a screen that was dissociated and see the movement on the screen and decide where their hand should be moving. And they had 2.1 seconds, I'm not sure why, to do this, and see, basically they could quantify the errors by saying how far they went outside of these bounds and how far over the 2.1 seconds they got to try to get it around in a circle. So when they did this at first, this is kind of what it looked like. This is not actual data, but just a kind of a reproduction of something I saw in the paper. Then what they did is they said, okay, practice this 100 times. And they got pretty good at it. So they did it over and over and over and over again. And they were able to keep it, much closer within the bounds. Again, this isn't real data, but hopefully a nice visual representation to show that they got better at it. So then they said, okay, you're good at it. You've done this 100 times. Now I want you to take a 30-minute break. And I want one group just to kind of sit off to the side in a quiet room. And I want another group to practice alternate nostril breathing for 30 minutes. So they did this. And when they came back and tested them, the controls had lost all of their skills. So they basically looked just like they did at the beginning of the study, just from 30 minutes. But the alternate nostril breathing group retained the skill. So after that break, they looked just as good as they did beforehand. And then if that wasn't enough, they went back and tested them 24 hours later and got the exact same results. So again, the controls looked just like before, they basically had no skill at it. And then the alternate nostril breathing group, even without doing any more alternate nostril breathing, they improved. They looked just like they did at the end of that first trial. So this was pretty crazy. And even in the paper, they used the word remarkable a lot, which is well warranted here. And then there's lots of justification for like what this actually means. You know, there's proprioception and intro, all these different things you could relate this simple act of drawing a circle to, but how it actually works in the brain is unknown. Like, how did the alternate nostril breathing improve this? It could be a host of things. You know, the more yogic literature relates the left nostril to the right hemisphere of our brain, and then the right nostril to the left hemisphere of our brain. More recent scientific research hasn't been able to validate that, but they have shown that like the left nostril impacts more of the back of the brain, whereas the right nostril impacts more of the front of the brain. And we also know that the left and right nostrils alternately impact the nervous system. So like either the calming side or the sympathetic side. So there's a lot of things going on, but nonetheless, the most important is that it worked, right? That it was actually really, really powerful for improving the learning and retention of that motor skill. And so I want to incorporate this into our 12-minute practice. So I want you to now take a few minutes and we're going to practice some alternate nostril breathing. I'm going to guide you through it, and then we'll do a couple minutes together. But first, I want to show you kind of the hand placement and which fingers we'll use in case you've never practiced this before. So you can begin by taking your index finger and your middle finger and bringing them to your palm so that you have your thumb out, and then your, sorry, now I can see myself, and your right ring finger out. And those will be the two fingers we'll use to block our nostrils alternately. And then you basically start by blocking your right nostril with your right thumb, and you just press it gently across against the outside kind of that soft tissue there, just enough to close it. If you have really blocked nostrils, don't worry about doing this. Or if your one nostril is really blocked, just don't press down quite as hard so that you can still get a little bit of airflow through it. But in general, you just kind of press against it to block the airflow. And then you start by taking an exhale through your left nostril. So you would exhale fully, and then you would inhale fully through the left. Then you would switch fingers and switch sides and exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Exhale through the left. Inhale through the left. Switch, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Switch, exhale through the left. Okay, now just release your hand for a minute. We just did a couple cycles there. And I want to give you a couple ways to kind of view this. If you decide you'd like to try it on your own later, the two kind of frames you could take is, one is that after an inhale, switch your nostrils. So if you're taking an inhale now, you know it's time to switch my nostril, and I'll exhale through the other one. So that's one way. If you get lost during the practice, you can come back to that and then reorient yourself. Another way to think about it is, in a lot of the ancient traditions, they viewed the breath cycle starting on an exhale rather than an inhale. So we think of, if we take a breath, we usually start with an inhale, then end with an exhale. But they thought the breath cycle started with an exhale and then an inhale. And so if you look at it from that frame of reference, all alternate nostril breathing is breathing on taking one breath through the left, then one breath through the right, one breath through the left, one breath through the right. So it'd be one through the left, one through the right. So exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. So that's just a couple of different brain tricks you can use as you're doing the practice to try to keep yourself oriented. So let's go ahead and do a couple of minutes of this just to get us used to it. Again, if you get lost, just reset and come back to it. So Begin by, again, using your right thumb against the right nostril, the outside of the right nostril, and take an exhale through your left. Inhale through your left. Exhale through your right. Inhale through the right. Exhale through the left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale through the left. Now just continue that at your own pace. We'll just go for about 10 more seconds here. All right, and then you can go ahead and release. Did everyone feel comfortable doing that? Anyone have any challenges? No. Maybe you feel a little more focused or concentrated now. So I think a big part of why that works, as you were going through it and doing this a lot myself, is that it's challenging. Like, I think there's something about having to, it forces you into mindfulness. It forces you into the present moment because you need to keep track of what nostril you're in. And I wonder if that's a big reason why it helped with the circle drawing and things. But in any case, that's just my opinion. But so let's move on now. So we have alternate nostril breathing, we have mindful breathing. And so the last thing we're going to talk about is slow breathing. So slow breathing is near and dear to my heart. It is breathing at a rate of less than 10 breaths a minute. Usually it's closer to 6 breaths a minute. That's around the most commonly used rate. What does it do? It does a lot of things. And we've spent a couple of sessions now talking about this in the past, but for example, it synchronizes messages from your breath and your baroreceptors, which leads to increased oscillations of your heart or improved heart rate variability. It reduces oxidative stress. So that was one of the things we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that's really important for brain health. It lowers inflammation by activating our calming parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. And so that's going to help reduce inflammation, which again, we saw at the beginning about the importance of inflammation in brain health. It reduces blood pressure, and it also significantly changes our brain waves. So we mentioned nasal breathing is important for brain waves, but slow nasal breathing even has more profound effects. And then many other things that we could discuss about the power of breathing for like executive function, for decision making. There's many different things. So the ones I want to discuss now, though, are something called cerebrospinal fluid and amyloid beta, because these are specifically related to the brain and Alzheimer's or risk of dementia in general. So cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, is a clear fluid that has many different roles for the brain and the spinal cord. It provides cushioning, but the thing that seems to be most crucial is that it helps with delivering nutrients and hormones to the brain while removing waste from the brain. So because of that, CSF is critical for the health of our brains, the health of our central nervous system, and for preventing things like Alzheimer's. So there was a study that showed had people go into an MRI and perform 4 different breathing techniques. So they did slow breathing, which was just a comfortable count of 3 to 5 seconds in, 3 to 5 seconds out. Then they did deep abdominal breathing, focusing on expanding the abdomen during inhalation. Then they did deep diaphragmatic breathing, which was more focused on the ribs. And then they did deep chest breathing, is what they called it, which was a focus on expanding the chest in the back. So these 3 are kind of the what is thought of as like the yogic complete breath. Usually start like belly, ribs, chest. And so they wanted to isolate each of those components individually and see how it impacted the cerebral spinal fluid. So what they found was that I call it slow breathing because they were all done a little slower, but all of the different variations increased the flow of cerebrospinal fluid toward the head by 16 to 28%. The deep, belly breathing had the greatest impact of 28%, deep diaphragmatic breathing by 23%, and then slow breathing by itself by 22%. And then the chest breathing by 16, which they said was not statistically significant. So really cool to see just from changing our, where we breathe into and slowing it down slightly, we can increase this. And so this is kind of restating some of the things they said is that slow, deep breathing may be very beneficial to brain health by increasing the flow of CFS towards the brain, which is going to help us remove more waste and deliver more nutrients. And there's lots of really brilliant people who talk about sleep, and I think it's probably like Matthew Walker. So they have chapters about this, and CSF plays a critical role during deep sleep as well. And so it could be that when we slow down our breath, we're kind of mimicking some of those processes. I'm not sure, but it's still really cool nonetheless to see that this can occur with just the breathing itself. So that's the CSF side of things. Let's look at amyloid beta, because this was a paper published in March of this year that got a lot of press and a lot of things on social media, looking at how slow breathing may help with Alzheimer's disease. So they looked at how they call it modulating heart rate oscillation affects plasma amyloid beta and tau levels. And these are key risk factors for Alzheimer's. And what they did is they took 108 adults. They classified them as older and younger, with the older having an average age of 66 and the younger an average age of 23. And they assigned them to one of two protocols, either to maximize their heart rate variability using slow breathing or minimize their heart rate variability using lots of different methods. And they were both instructed to do this for 20 to 40 minutes a day for 4 weeks. So what happened after the 4 weeks, both in the young and the old, the amyloid beta decreased and it reached statistical significance. So this is amyloid beta 42 and 40. I'm not sure what the difference is. All I know is they said these are really key risk factors of Alzheimer's disease. So in both the young and the old, in these two different markers, the red line or the orangish line here is showing that beforehand to afterhand, there were significant decreases in all of these, whether you're young or old. And so in their words, what they said was that as far as they could tell from published literature, this was the only study ever defined that a behavioral intervention could reduce this amyloid beta levels. So that's pretty remarkable to see in a Nature paper, in a paper published in Nature Scientific Reports, and just to see that level of kind of confidence in the statement here, and just again shows the power of just something so simple as slow breathing. Now, I don't know, I've heard as I started reading more into it, amyloid beta, there's mixed results on how important is it really for predicting Alzheimer's, but nonetheless, as far as I could tell, it's still really significant to see these reductions in it because there's so much association with it in Alzheimer's. Whether it's predictive, whether it causes it is unknown, but it does seem really relevant nonetheless. So I want to finish now with mindful slow breathing, which is basically combining slow breathing with mindfulness to get the best of both worlds. And then we'll put that into the 12-minute practice with alternate nostril breathing. So one last study, because I'm a nerd and like that, but there was a neat study that looked at this slow breathing, which does a lot of cool things, breathing at 6 breaths per minute by itself, or doing slow breathing with an added mindfulness component using a focus word. So they told them to focus on either an emotionally neutral word or a word that elicits positive emotions for you while you're doing this breathing exercise. And what they found is that basically slow breathing amplified the benefits of the mindfulness practice, And then mindfulness amplified the benefits of the slow breathing practice. So they are very complementary. So with the breathing, we're changing the physiology of our body. We're changing our heart rate variability. We're lowering inflammation and things like that. And with the mindfulness, we're getting all those brain changes that we discussed at the beginning. And when you combine the two, it's kind of like this beautiful symphony of two of the most powerful contemplative practices that have been used for millennia, right? And it shows like this huge benefit. So to actually do it, it's really simple. I already described it, but I want to show you the instructions again. You simply just take an emotionally meaningful or neutral word. So you might think of something like peace or love, or you could just use the word or the number one, anything you want. So start thinking of this now because we're going to use it. So think of a word that might be useful to you. You can also do a short phrase. I can tell you, like when I do this practice, I do this almost every morning, and I use the phrase "be the change." Yes, the cliche Gandhi line, right? But because when I was discovering some of these practices, it was like exactly where I was at in my life, where I wanted to. I was so fed up with the world, right? But I knew I couldn't change everything. So I decided I need to be the change and be just a good person. And so it was my reminder every morning to be the change, right? And so just pick something that's meaningful to you. You don't have to share it with anyone ever. It's your word or your phrase, and take that. And then while we're doing the practice, you're going to focus on and silently repeat that word to yourself. And so you're going to extend it to match the length of the inhalation and the exhalation. So for example, if your word was peace, in your head, you would be thinking peace, peace. You would extend it out to match so that you're not repeating it multiple times. You're just matching it to each breath you take, each inhale and each exhale. So does that make sense to everyone? Everyone got a word? I see a few heads nodding. Okay, cool. So we are going to use that idea and we're going to put it into a 12-minute practice now. It's going to start with alternate nostril breathing. Then it's going to move into a little bit of slow breathing. And then I'm going to ask you to use your focus word and bring that into into the practice. And it's pre-recorded here so that I can't mess up the timing or mess you up. So I'm just going to hit play once everyone's comfortable. It looks like I can only see a few of you, but it seems like everyone is. So I will just hit play, turn up my volume, and I hope you enjoy this practice. Come into a comfortable position, either lying down or sitting with a straight back. Take a moment to settle comfortably into this position. Now use your right thumb to close your right nostril and exhale through your left. Now inhale through your left and exhale through your right. Inhale through your right and exhale through your left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Continue with this alternate nostril breathing, matching your inhales and exhales to the tones. Now release your hand and breathe in and out through both nostrils. Breathe in and breathe out. Inhale and exhale. Now bring to mind your focus word and concentrate fully on that word during each inhale and exhale for the remainder of the practice. And when your mind wanders, just say to yourself, "Oh well," and come back to your focus word. Now take a moment to relax and enjoy the benefits of this practice. Thank yourself for taking the time to use your breath to support your brain health. That concludes this session. Have an awesome day. Great. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed slow breathing for that long. And yeah, that's all I have. And I love any questions or any discussion. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other. Any thoughts about the practice or the presentation?
I just have a silly question. I had to step out for a low treatment, and the study about slow breathing and amyloid, how long were they doing it for?
So it was 20 minutes, or they asked them to do it between 20 and 40 minutes for each day for 4 weeks.
Awesome. Wow. Only 4 weeks. That's amazing.
Yeah, only 4 weeks. And that's about, so from all the research that I've ever seen, that's about what it takes. 4 weeks of doing it daily to see improvements with like heart rate variability, cortisol, things like that. And so it's really neat to see with the amyloid beta.
That's crazy. I'm on it.
Awesome.
4 weeks starting today.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so the 12 minutes we just did from that pulls from Amishi Jha, who I mentioned, and then Herbert Benson, who is the discoverer of the relaxation response. And they both settled on about 12 minutes is what you need to see benefits in one session. So that's what we did. But yeah, 20 to 40 minutes might be a lot, but if you can manage it, it seems like anything's better than nothing. So if 12 or 10 works, do whatever you can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Renee.
I have a question. Where do you find the tonal thing that we listen to? Like, is there an app or some kind of place to go to have that tonal thing that we followed that helped for you?
Yeah, sure. So that actually is, I had someone make that for me. But there are lots of apps. So if you just want an app on your phone, I could give you a few right now. There's one called the Breathing app, and that's got a really soothing tone as well. There's one called Breathe, just Breathe, and that one's really nice. And then I had these tones, so like this practice I can give to Peter and he can distribute it, or I also just have the tones by themselves. If you enjoy that tone, and you could do it for as long as you want. I could send you it for an hour and you could set a timer or whatever you need, because I have the rights to be able to do that now, which is nice.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Nick, I would love to share that the practice part. Have it, WhatsApp chat. That would be really great. The 12 minutes.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, that's no problem.
So I had a question. So a few presentations ago that you've done was, I believe, on the 12-minute breathing, slow breathing. And this one is combining alternate nostrils, which was it about like 2 minutes and
yeah, probably about 2.5 minutes
of each one. And the last one was clearly longer.
Yeah.
5 or 6 minutes, 6-7 minutes.
Yep.
So just curious, when you break it up this way, because I've done 12 minutes of slow breathing, then I have a second part. But if you do it this way, what's the differences between the two methodologies? Like if I just did 12 minutes of slow breathing to the tone, or starting with 2 minutes with the alternate nostrils, 2 minutes, the second one was just slow breathing?
Yeah, it was just slow breathing.
And then slow breathing with the word, which was the third.
Yep.
So just curious if there's a difference, or does this contribute more to brain health, or is the other one more relaxation? What would you say?
So this is it's a great question. I can't give you 100% answer. I'm not sure, you're right, but I think the combination is really beneficial for the brain because you're using that focus word. And I think that brings in that mindfulness push up, right? That as your brain wanders away from your word or your phrase, you come back to it. And so you're bringing in the mindfulness, but you're using the breathing to support that. So slow breathing does a lot of things specifically to kind of support that brain health by changing the blood flow and changing the brain waves, especially the slow nasal breathing. And so I don't know if there's like the only thing I know is at the end, that study I mentioned, like where they showed the combination of the two, and all that, the important thing they showed there is that the adding the mindfulness, the mantra, helped to reduce the natural tendency to overbreathe. So when we slow our breath down, we have a tendency to compensate and end up breathing too much and actually mildly hyperventilate. And so that mantra tends to take your brain away from the discomfort of the slow breathing, and it helps you to breathe at a nice, easy pace. But getting back to the brain health, I think, I found this is just in my own practice. I was looking for something, right? I was searching for something for myself, for my mental and emotional health, actually. And I stumbled upon a couple different things. And so I combined them personally and found them really valuable. And so I started sharing them. And so people found it beneficial to have them kind of combined, but I don't know, if there's a huge difference or what.
Yeah, I love the idea of the combination. And I guess my second question is, when you first introduced us to slow breathing, I did it and I loved it. And then it's like, I don't have a practice of it. I don't do it daily, but I have a meditation practice daily. So I'm trying to understand if there's ways I imagine ways to incorporate this practice or slow breathing practice and then continue with the meditation practice. This way I can get to that daily, regimen, because I really enjoy that slow breathing practice when I did it.
Okay.
But I haven't been able to do the 30-day, which I'm thinking maybe September might be a 30-day challenge for the Diabetes Sangha. I don't know. We can pull that out there. What do you think?
Well, I'll throw you a few things. So the first thing that comes to mind is that in all of the ancient texts about breathing was never supposed to be its own practice. It was a preparation for meditation. So you did your breath work and then you meditated. And sometimes as little as just a couple of minutes, 5 minutes. So, maybe start small and think, okay, I have this set meditation practice I already do. Let me just do 2 minutes of alternate nostril breathing and then go into my meditation, or 5 minutes of just slow breathing and go into meditation. So that'd be one way to look at it. The other thing, I'm a breathing zealot beyond belief, right? But I read tons of books and I read about things that could change my life, and they don't resonate with me, right? I like them, I know they work, but I just don't stick with it. It's not for me at this moment in my life. So you have a beautiful meditation practice. Like, I would say maybe you found what's right for Peter, right? And maybe this slow breathing is really interesting and you like it when you do it, but maybe you're happy with the meditation and maybe you don't need breathing. Of course, I would still push you to try it, but I don't want to be that person. I want to be open to it. So it's just something else to consider. But doing it as preparation for meditation might be a nice way.
I love that part of it. Or a lot of times in our meditation practice, we're doing a breathing practice in the beginning. So I imagine it can be similar as a way to calm the body down. This is more specific. And the last question is on the word, because I may have missed it. Can it be a Sanskrit word? Can it be a word? Can it be two words like with joy, with on the inside?
Oh, yeah, of course. Whatever resonates with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. This was wonderful, as always. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much. Can you go back? I missed part of the slide. It was about mindfulness. You can just tell me or you can pull it up, whatever you'd like. The mindfulness changes the gray matter, and then it was the insula, the amygdala, and I just wanted to look at that again, if possible.
Of course. Yeah. Let's see.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm here. Let me try. Let me go here. Okay, there we go. Oh, sorry. Oh, it went away. Sorry. There we go. There. All right. So it was right here. And I'll just make it bigger.
Thank you.
So I took this from, this one was from The Healing Power of Meditation and Altered Traits. So there's 2 books I read that I kind of combined to make these bullet points, just so you know where they're coming from.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Let's see.
Thank you, Nick. It was a great practice.
Thanks, Karen.
Hope to see you again soon.
Likewise.
Nick, is there a time of day that works better for the breathing practices? Or it's, again, I'm assuming just like working out, whenever you can fit it in, that works for you. But given a choice, is it nice to start the day with it? Does it make a difference?
So I don't know the answer, but yes, I'm a huge fan of doing it first thing in the morning. I like to use the analogy of like if you were reading a book or an article, you know, the first sentence is what has to grab your attention. It's like, and it sets the tone for the rest of the article, or it sets the tone, or like a first impression when you meet someone, it sets the tone for how you're going to think of them. I think of doing our practice first thing in the morning sets the tone for the day you want. So you cultivate joy, you cultivate peace, or just calmness, or whatever it is you're looking for, and that'll help you see it through that lens for the rest of the day. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of first thing in the morning, right when I wake up, and I always ask or suggest people do it. But like you said, ultimately it comes down to when can you do it?
Right.
And that's most important.
Cool. I might eat coffee first, but
Can't blame you there.
yeah. Well, it's about 9 o'clock or so. So unless there's any other questions, this was wonderful, Nick, as always. You're a
Awesome.
real
Thanks,
treasure
Peter.
for us and the squad, and everyone enjoys. Look forward to sharing your presentations if that's okay. So those that couldn't make
Of
it
course.
tonight
Yeah.
and continue practicing with you. And yeah, really so thankful that you offer this with us tonight. And I know it's late for you. And I believe you were also in the middle of a course, right? That started today?
Yeah, it started today. Yeah. So it's
Yes.
breathing for mental and emotional health. So a little bit different, but still a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar practices.
So yeah. I appreciate
Awesome. Yeah, and you
it.
kicked off a slow breathing September for us.
I hope so. Oh, that's a good name. I have to steal that for Instagram. No, I'm just joking.
I like that. All right. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you
Good
so
night,
much,
everybody.
Nick.
Yep. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. And I guess I just end it. Yeah, I just ended.